Okay, let's get up and running here. I will try to get my camera adjusted more or less straight, and we will get a few of our panelists on here to join me, and then we'll be up and running. Anyway, what I'd like everybody to do, since this is number 5 of 5, is make sure you store up whatever questions you have so far. I want to make sure we go through that, and in the meantime, let me see if I can promote a few of you to panelists. I'm going to kind of do what we did last time. I just promote everybody, and then we can have an open conversation here. As we go. See if I can get that to work. Everybody hear me okay? The audio good? Okay, good. Promote to panelists, promote to panelists. Well, good. So as we get started here, who has some specific questions from the last few sessions we've done here? And if you're muted, you have to click unmute to get live. No one? Well, that's easy enough. Okay. There's Merrick. Let me promote Merrick to panelist. There's Merrick. And Merrick Bob's going to be joining us, but a little bit late, and so we will get going. You know, it's our group of expert martial artists are always seem silent to begin the conversation, and then they figure out all their questions when it's time to cut it off at the end. So we'll have to figure out a way to reverse that trend. But anyway, so as maybe a recap here for a second, right, is there's, you know, we see schools that are doing really well, meaning, you know, 500,000 to $1 million plus, you know, even 2 million, that are on the spectrum of at one end doing essentially nothing online, and on the other end generating 30, 35 enrollments a month online, right? And what I do see is the consistent element, though, is you can confuse activity with accomplishment pretty quickly. And what you don't want to do is end up going into school every day, sitting at a computer starting at 10 a.m. in the morning and putzing around and clicking around and surfing the internet and then posting something over here, posting something over there, posting crap on Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest. You know, if you become a time suck, it can certainly become a time suck very quickly. And that time suck doesn't have a proportionate return on investment, right? So you do have to be very careful about that. And what I see many times happen in our industry is in the realm of the gurus is, you know, people promote themselves as online marketing or search marketing or social media marketing experts. But then what they try to do is push everybody into believing the only marketing route is online, or the only marketing route social media, or the only marketing route is somebody's got a little bit of background noise there, or the only marketing route is Google. And the reality is, when you build out, you know, again, the term I borrowed, but marketing Parthenon, when you have 20 or 30 things effectively going on, you need to be an expert at internal referral marketing and family add-ons. You need to be an expert at community outreach marketing, working with local and the kids market with local elementary schools, daycares, etc. In the adult market with local employers and with local social organizations. You need to be an expert at event marketing, getting really good at everything from movie theaters to other big live events in your area, etc. And I've seen school owners, for instance, my instructor, June Ree, and another friend of mine, Chris Rapold, who are both so good at publicity. June Ree was the forever expert, along with his friend Muhammad Ali, of course. But if you look at that element, getting press in real media, in the newspapers, on radio, TV, as well as online media, and some online media is becoming real media, but a lot of it is kind of pretend. Just because somebody has a parenting blog doesn't mean anybody's paying attention to it, right? So I'd much rather have a spot on the 5 o'clock news on the CBS News channel in your area than have 22 little local blogs that mention you. But you got to have the spectrum. So when you start looking at that Parthenon, you want to add in all methods of follow-up. So once you generate a lead, and whether that lead is it came from a birthday party or it came in from an opt-in on your website who clicked on a Google ad, you want to have a follow-up system that takes leads from online to offline pretty quickly, but also follows up with them online. So once you have somebody who's interested, you want to continue to drip on them. In internet parlance, sequential autoresponder. You want sequential autoresponder via email, which means you can just put the name in the whether it's Aweber, Constant Contact, MailChimp, or something more sophisticated and more pain in the ass like Infusionsoft or Salesforce or some combination of those other things. But what you want to do is once you have a lead, you want to stick on them, follow up quickly online and offline, and follow up forever online and offline. Both of those things are important. So sequential autoresponder just means in sequence, you automatically communicate with them. Sequential autoresponder via email, sequential autoresponder via retargeting, Facebook and Google and their related properties, sequential autoresponder via text message, sequential autoresponder via automated voicemail, which again, depending upon relationship, you have to be legally a little careful with that. Sequential autoresponder via direct mail. And what happens a lot of times is we gravitate towards free rather than recognize the value of what the prospect is. And in order of communication with a lead online or a lead from any source is best is belly to belly, face to face. So if I'm out at a live event and I'm talking to somebody face to face, that's the point at which I give them information. I make the appointment. I give them directions. I make sure they have all the information, because you're never going to be more persuasive with another human being than you are face to face, belly to belly, having a communication with them. Would everybody agree with that? Number two is getting them on the phone. So the sequential autoresponder sequence should include at all times a human being gets them on the phone as quickly as humanly possible, right? So if you have let's say an opt-in from Facebook, well, our mission is to initiate sequential autoresponders and landing pages that encourage them to call us, because that's going to be the most solid prospect, but also immediately kick off somebody from our side contacts them. Now, what we know about outbound telemarketing is almost everyone nowadays is on a cell phone. They're not on a landline, right? Even landlines now, but certainly cell phones, everyone has caller ID. And what we used to know is if I had contact information for somebody, I could call them, for instance, on Sunday night and get hold of 9 out of 10. What we know now is that probably 9 out of 10, maybe 95% out of 100 of outbound calls that you initiate, they're not going to answer. Everybody have that experience? Very low percentage if they don't recognize the number. And I'm not talking about you're calling one of your brown belts. I'm talking about you're calling a lead, you're doing a follow-up on a lead. So, but what the most effective way to convince them to come in, come into your school, do an intro, is by talking to them on the phone. So the The quandary is the closer you are to the point at which they're raising their hand. So if it's an online lead from Google, they're still looking at your web page and you initiate an outbound call. The closer you are to that point, the more likely you are to get hold of them and the more likely they are to be receptive. Does that make sense for everyone? So you want to initiate immediately. The mistake is a lead comes into your website, maybe you only collect email address, that's a mistake. But a lead comes into your website, it goes into email, which is a mistake. And then somebody comes into the school at 3 o'clock, checks the email, starts trying to call people, and then anybody they don't get hold of from 3 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they call them tomorrow. I see a lot of schools, and that's what their lead follow-up system looks like. That's abysmal. What you've got to be doing is when the lead comes in on the website, whoever should be calling them gets an immediate text. Notice I said text, not email. Gets an immediate text with their name and number so they can initiate a call to the person while they're on the website. Also, the person on the website should get an immediate autoresponder by text that gives the name of the person that you want to have talk to them and the phone number and says, please give us a call. Also, what we're seeing a lot, and I see Jeff Patterson joined us. Jeff, you've been very effective with this. I'll remember their names in a second. The guys who are doing a lot of your Facebook advertising have been very good at this. About once an opt-in comes in, bring them to a landing page with a countdown timer that says if you call us within the next 60 minutes, you also get an additional free month of lessons and a free uniform or some pretty powerful offer to prompt them to initiate the call. Is this making sense for everyone? So that was a mouthful. So you want to add in sequential autoresponder, which I include as retargeting, Facebook and related properties, Google and related properties. I include as email. I include as text messaging, automated voicemail, automated or manual, either way, direct mail follow-up. A live person immediately and repetitiously calls them until they get a hold of them, right? So you want sequential autoresponder in all of those methods of follow-up. Huge mistake is to just send them an email, expecting that's going to be what is going to get them to initiate a call. Number one, an awful lot of people, even if they pay attention to your email, and stats show they get 145 or 150 emails a day, probably more now, is one mistake is thinking that somebody is going to see the email almost immediately upon it being sent. Well, one, through the whole internet process, there can be pretty significant delays in delivery. But an awful lot of people look at their email once a day, or they look at their email a couple times a week. They're not looking at your website and up pops your email and yeah, that's the way I get hold of them. That's not what happens. Is this making sense for everybody? Questions on any of that? I don't want to just ramble on without and make sure everybody.
Master Oliver.
Go ahead.
This is Jimmy Higgins.
Go ahead.
IBM has an AI program called Dr. Watson.
Yep.
They are actually giving people a way to sign up for chatbots to put on your website where the AI will interact and talk and engage any website visitor through Dr. Watson. And you just teach Dr. Watson basically how to talk to your visitors and sell people and get them to call you or say, hey, can I give you a call? So you can actually sign up for 1 year free for Dr. Watson. And then after that year, they're going to charge you $150 a month for that AI chatbot.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up something that was next on my list is the trend line is towards those automated chat boxes. Does everybody know what he means by that? Is what a chat bot is. A chat box is when it pops up and says, has a picture of a human being and says, here to answer any questions, or would you like to schedule your free introductory class right now, or some such initial opening line, preferably with a picture of an attractive human being, usually female, on the right. I mean, that's scientifically validated. So a picture of a doesn't matter who's behind the scenes. You know, when Bob is the chat box, we always have a picture of Jennifer, who's an attractive brunette. You have a picture that pops up, and then they interact with it, and the stats are showing. And it's a very good point, Jimmy, that I wanted to get into, is that that's the next evolution of what's happening online. Is people would rather have a communication immediately with a live human being, or what they perceive to be a live human being. And the Dr. Watson, the trained artificial intelligence side of it, I always tend to be skeptical of that stuff, but the stats I've been seeing recently, Merrick, have you seen any numbers on this? I've been seeing a lot of stats that indicate that people don't know the difference or don't care.
Yeah, that's a Turing test where the guy invented it. You can't tell the difference if you were talking to a human or not. And Dr. Watson is a true AI. It's not just a predisposed, here, answer this if the guy asks. They actually figure out and actually interact in a creative way, not just a canned answer to their question or their response.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've seen stats that, even failing the Turing test, which is right. What was that creepy movie that was all about that? I liked it, but it was creepy. But everybody knows what the Turing test is. The Turing test is if a human being can have a communication and not be able to tell whether it's a human being or a computer, then that's the true test of artificial intelligence, right? So it's about whether the machine can communicate back in such a way that it's indistinguishable between the machine and the human being. But that's a very valid point. And I will say all the way along is, and again, this is in part the evolution to mobile, is the chat box phenomenon. Jimmy, we were spending a lot of time testing this and practicing those. It must be 5 years ago now. I lose track of time, but it was a long time ago. And there were a few we were working with, and you'd pop up the chat box and try to have a communication with them, and you'd find how long they needed to be on the web page before they were receptive, and try to pop up. But at that point, what happened is a huge percentage of people, once you crept up on them, disappeared, right? So it was doing it ahead of the technology and doing it ahead of the acceptance. What has changed is people's experience of online interaction, combined with, to a great extent, they're becoming immune to worrying about, you're haunting them or privacy and all that stuff has gone away. And now people are very receptive. The stats are very promising that whether it's on a landing page on your website, in all of those environments, that's pretty promising. And Jimmy, that's good feedback for everybody.
Yes, sir.
And I would always want to have live human being available, trying to get them on. You're never going to, chat box isn't going to be better than talking to a live human being on the phone.
Well, I'm trying to train the Watson AI to be a salesperson that would get them to let us call them. It's like, just give us your number. We'll give you somebody to call, answer your question. But I'm trying to get the AI trained so that it gets them to either call us or we call them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're exactly right with that. And a lot of the chat box that I've seen people do it pretty effectively does exactly that. And there are systems where they can just hit the button and it'll initiate a call into you at the same time. So the chat box could be programmed where, it gets to a certain point in the conversation and says, here, just click this button and you'll be connected to me directly, and I can further answer any questions. That's probably easier. And then it can initiate the inbound call. And again, they're 90% plus going to be on mobile anymore. So then it initiates the call directly from their phone to call you directly.
Yeah, and if I can get the AI is actually very creative. They come up with ideas. You don't even have to program them; they figure it out. But you put a button, or in Google, they actually have a pay per call not pay per click.
Yeah.
And the pay per call is actually cheaper because so many people don't bid on the pay per call stuff. But that little button shows up. So when people actually do a Google, they pay per call, it directly dials you like, aha. But I'm going to try to get that integrated with Watson and let Watson figure out how to be a decent salesperson at the same time getting him to call us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, all the research is showing that's the direction this is going, is that I'm sitting in the dentist's office and I come from a Facebook ad or I come from a Google search or whatever, and I see this, and the direction is going that they'd rather interact with a chat box than to fill out lengthy forms and give you a ton of information. So
right.
The chat boxes haven't yet replaced opt-in forms, but it is going in that direction, right? So it's in a situation where you don't take off the opt-in forms and just use chat box, but it is at a certain point where you should be utilizing both.
We're also working, one of our staff, she's working on game theory and game production in her university. And I've set her on a task to do facial mapping so that we can actually have sort of an avatar that's not just audio and not just textual, but it's also visual of seeing somebody change their expression and, say or smile or grin when they actually make the text that comes out. We're going to try, that's not right away, but we're going to try to integrate that by the end of summer with Dr. Watson. Because I talked to the IBM team and they said, yeah, that's a great thing. We never had that, but we have an API that will let you do that. I'm like, oh, cool. So that's going to be interesting too.
In other words, it would be a live video animation essentially on the site.
Yes, sir. And it would be, Watson is a true AI. It's not just a chatbot like all the early stage stuff.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting to see how that works. And they have a whole thing that's like fake videos where you can actually sync somebody's face to what's being said, which we're going to try and do that too. But like you can take any celebrity and you make your own expressions with what they say, and it becomes a fake video, but no one can tell the difference. It's really incredible stuff, but we're going to sort of use that to see if we can interact and engage our site visitors, especially our mobile site visitors, right away, instantaneously, and they're like, oh, okay, well then we'll call you right away.
Yeah, no, I think all of that has great promise. And what we do know over the last 10 years is clearly video works much better than static. Engaging video is much more important than long form letters as opposed to video. Long form letters work in a certain context, but video is better. And then we also know that it's trending, although not there yet, that chat box interaction is more effective. And then you're exactly right, Jim. If you can program it to be visually like communicating with a human as well, and if you can program it to lead them to initiating a phone call, even better, right? And it's absolutely true. The reason for sequential autoresponder, voicemail, text, all this automated stuff is the humans are so utterly unreliable, right? Now, I don't mean to be critical, but if I have a program director who's supposed to be answering the phone 24/7, and they're in the middle of a fight with their girlfriend or their boyfriend, or they're out at a noisy restaurant or any example in between, taking a mid-afternoon nap, they are difficult to rely on to initiate an outbound call in 20 seconds, like the whole system is designed around to get the follow-up. So that's where these automated systems facilitate and backstop the human beings being unreliable, at least in part. I mean, if the humans were completely reliable, on one end, if the humans were completely reliable, some of this automated stuff you wouldn't need. And on the other end, as soon as the artificial intelligence catches up, you eliminate the need for human beings to do some portion of this, right? But there is always a spectrum. I mean, don't miss, like phone banks. Is everybody thought they were all going to become automated and push 1 for this and 2 for this, and where companies are thriving on customer service. Southwest Airlines is a great example of this, and in a big airline is on getting it out of that and getting it where you get a live human being, and a live human being solves their problems. Everybody thought, I went to India. We were in Dubai at Wipro, which is one of the big outsourcers, and they have all these people, a huge building, a LEED certified. I mean, it was kind of stupid, but it's the #1 LEED Platinum, environmentally friendly building, surrounded by people, using the river right behind it as a public toilet. But what everybody thought was all of the customer outsourcing and so forth, since American humans are expensive and unreliable, we're now going to use Indian humans, and then it moves to the Philippines. And the high level of customer service companies are coming full circle to the point that the phone bank is now in Oklahoma City, or it's in Provo, Utah, or one place or another. Notice never in New York, Philadelphia. It's middle America where people are perceived as being friendly. So you do have to pay attention to these trends, jump on them when it's appropriate, and sometimes be skeptical of them because sometimes it backfires as well. Jim, anything to add to that? That was a couple of good contributions, and I was next getting to the chat box thing, but the Dr. Watson is an interesting enhancement on that.
Well, Dr. Watson, we're going to tweak it, and just like split testing, an ad on Facebook, you got to split test everything. So we're going to try lots of stuff, and we'll just see, and we'll report back, let everybody know how it's going.
Yeah, I'd love to hear feedback, and I'm sure Merrick just made a note to track that down as well, right, Merrick? Yep, there. See, Merrick, anything on that follow up that I didn't get to?
Yeah, so I have something to say about the checkboxes.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you are not able to be live all the time, there's also new features that basically if somebody, type the message and you might receive your text to your mobile phone. So you don't have to be all the time alive on the website or to be able to communicate with somebody who is asking questions. So you receive a text message and then you can communicate through a cell phone or call them right away. So this is kind of the newer feature that were now, it wasn't there like a few years ago, directly to a cell phone.
Yeah.
You mean the direct connect?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that has a lot of potential as well, especially tied with the chat box to lead them to initiate the outbound call. The closer you can get to getting them to initiate the call and immediately, and the huge failure would be you do all this stuff to get them to initiate the call and do an inbound call, and then they get voicemail or something like that, right? Is you've got to make sure when they initiate the inbound call, they're getting a quality human being who's going to answer the phone, answer it appropriately, and take a quality inbound info call. But you're exactly right, Merrick, that new technology. And again, a lot of it is, 10 years ago, if they were mostly on a desktop computer, a lot of times without even a sound card or a mic or a camera or any of that stuff, getting them to initiate a call wasn't very effective. But now if they're on their iPhone or they're on their, their Android, the Samsung Android, getting that initiated inbound call, and, a lot of times they're sitting in traffic or, some other place where it's just as easy to talk to a chat bot a little bit and then initiate a call to you and make an appointment than it is to do much clicking around online. The old logic, and there is still some value to this, but the old logic of the internet marketing gurus was you want to have a lot of stuff on your website that they can click around. And the stickier it is, the better. And the more they can click and jump around in one thing or another. And there's a philosophical debate back and forth. And if you see guys like Gary Vaynerchuk is one, who's the kind of the social media guru. If you don't know who I'm talking about immediately, he's kind of a skinny little guy that got started with YouTube wine videos, and he's very smart, very foul-mouthed. So you can always recognize his style. On one end, there's that type of philosophical approach, which is all about branding and building awareness and, you know, having web presence and social presence where they click around and they bounce around and eventually they come around to you. And at the opposite end of the spectrum is kind of the click funnels and related philosophical approach, which is land them on something designed to get them to take a little bit of an action, land them on something else to get them to take a little bit more of an action, land them on something else to take a little bit more of an action, and then follow up repetitiously everywhere. And probably reality in most cases is somewhere in between. The click funnels approach, discrete actions, get them to move forward with constant sequential automated autoresponder follow-up, and with immediate, you know, get them on the phone, is certainly necessary for something like a Facebook ad. Because landing them from a Facebook ad on their iPhone while they're waiting for somebody for a lunch meeting, and then just thinking of that as a branding thing, that they're going to, you know, suddenly stare at your website for 22 minutes and click around and so forth, is a fool's errand, right? What I heard somebody talk about, the description with Facebook, which I thought was pretty good. They were talking about Facebook video. Is they talked about it like putting a huge flat screen TV at the side of the highway where people are going 60 miles an hour past it, expecting them to watch a long form video. In the Facebook environment, is you've got just a couple of seconds to grab their attention. The visual is very important to grab their attention, and then you've got to get them to click into something with discrete follow-up. And it's essential to have the retargeting links, pixel, HTML code for Google, because an awful lot of them are going to click and then their lunch arrives. They're going to click and then the doctor calls them in the office. They're going to click and then the light changes to green, and now they forget you exist. So you've got to have that constantly following up, even if they gave you zero information, even if they interacted with a chat box in zero capacity. What else would you add to that, Merritt?
Probably nothing.
Is that good? Okay. Other questions? And Jimmy, that was great contributions, by the way. I hope everybody wrote that down. The AI side of this has huge potential. And I've got to tell you, as a multi-school operator for more years than I want to admit now, I think the official Mile High Karate 35th anniversary was last August, so coming into 36 years this next August, is anytime that I can either eliminate or automate and not to have a human being touch it, I'm 100% in favor of that. Because I always consider the human element to be the place where it's going to fall apart. Not that software can't break, and not that email doesn't get delivered and so forth, but the human element is a place where things fall apart if you're not careful. So the more that we can have artificial intelligence behind it, retargeting, sequential autoresponder, direct mail, everything else, the better off we are. And the more we can encourage them to initiate a call into us, the better off we are. And by the way, as a brief aside, there are a lot of now internet-based phone systems that are, I see schools, if they're old tech, they've been around for 25 years, they still have a landline plugged in on the front desk, right? And then if they're a little bit younger, what they have is they bought a cell phone and they have a phone number they're using for the cell phone for the school number. But what I'd much prefer to be doing And there's a number of them, and I don't have any stock in any of them or affiliate codes or anything else. But there's a number of them, but a system like RingCentral or Line2 is another one. There's one that's advertised on XM radio that I hear all the time, Cricket or something like that. No, that's a cell phone provider. But an IP-based phone provider where you can port over your main number, and I'll use RingCentral as an example because it's the one that I have most used. With RingCentral, you can port your main school phone number into there, and then you can set it up to record inbound calls and record outbound calls. So now you can use that for training staff and monitoring the quality of the calls. You can put the RingCentral app on everybody's cell phone, and then they can have an inbound call coming to their cell phone with the caller ID reading the school phone number, so that you now know, well, it's coming to the RingCentral app anyway, but they now know that it's a business call, not a personal call. So I could have 5 staff members all with the RingCentral app coming in, with the phone coming in through that, or just forwarded from the RingCentral app, knowing from the caller ID that it was a business call, so they answer it appropriately, right? But the other thing I can do is with the RingCentral app, they can initiate an outbound phone call. The outbound phone call, the caller ID is going to read the school and the school's phone number. It's not going to read their personal cell phone. So now they're not using their personal cell phone number on outbound calls to prospects. They can also do outbound text messages to prospects from the RingCentral app using the school phone number. And then obviously you can receive inbound text messages from the school phone number as opposed to, say, a landline. So one of the things you want to do is you want to tie all this stuff together, right? So that if you have an inbound call, it's not going to get lost. You can route that inbound call so it goes to maybe 3 different phone numbers during the day. Whoever answers it first gets it. After 9 o'clock, maybe it goes to a live answering service. One that we've used, again, I don't have any skin in the game, is Pat Live. They're very good. There's others that are good, I'm sure. It could go to a live answering service from, say, 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. Then at 9 a.m. it switches over and automatically rings to 3 or 4 cell phones. And then maybe at 3 o'clock it automatically rings. You could have the school phone set up, on a computer, or you could plug in a landline and have it IP-based, whatever you wanted to do. But you could have it then ring to the school, or you could have it ring to the school and ring to another mobile of some sort, so that you can define day parts by day, so it can be different on Monday, different on Wednesday, different on Saturday, and so forth. But those types of integrations are super important so nothing falls through the cracks. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. Questions? No questions so far? Okay, easy enough. David Grout, and I don't see David here, had asked for a checklist of if you were sitting down fresh and had done nothing online, let's say, starting from scratch. You know, what's my checklist? What would I do first, right? And there's a great book. I should have had it in front of me. I will bring it up. But there's a great book about reputation. I'll try to give that as a recommendation for everybody. But what I would start with first online is building reputation, because we're in an era where any bad blip of bad feedback will haunt you forever. And you've got to and most of the way you get rid of that is you bury it in good, right? It's very hard. Now, that's not impossible, but it's very hard to get rid of somebody goes on to Yelp and they badmouth you, or they go on to Google and they badmouth you. Somebody goes on to Facebook and they badmouth you. It's very difficult to get rid of that, right? However, the way that you get rid of it is you bury it. So if I have 150 five-star reviews in Google and 150 five-star reviews in Facebook and, 22 in Yelp, because I don't really care much about Yelp, but you gotta have a few. And then somebody goes and they say something that's negative. Doesn't make that big a difference. And in fact, all the studies show, and this came out of Amazon initially, this trend line of reviews, is Amazon's own studies show that a product that has like 3 5-star reviews isn't viewed as credibly as a product that has a lot of reviews, but a portion of them are negative or very negative. Is when people have a tendency to kind of automatically discount negative reviews if there's a fair number of reviews, because they know. I mean, if you go search products in Amazon and look at the 1-star or the 0-star reviews, and oftentimes those reviews are something unrelated to the quality of the product. But we all know that a portion of the population is insane, right? So we all assume there's going to be some people, no matter what happens, if somebody deals with enough people, who are going to go scream online about something, oftentimes has nothing to do with them, right? But where I would start on my checklist is I'd start with reputation management. So I would always go and make sure your Google local page has been built out, photos, videos, that Google has you on the right place on the map, that Google has your website linked to the correct link, correct phone number, etc. Claim that, have that built out. But then I would go get a ton of 5-star testimonials on Google, and I would go get and build out your Facebook business page and go get a bunch of 5-star testimonials on your Facebook page. I would start there, because reputation now, people have been trained. Again, I mentioned it a couple times, don't want to repeat myself too much, but the average soccer mom is 70 or 80% likely that they're going to go Google you no matter how they found out about you originally, right? So they come to a birthday party, and Billy loves this. Mom's going to go home and Google you to see what everybody else has said before making a decision about coming back in. They pick up a rack card out at a local dry cleaners. They get a flyer on the Domino's pizza boxes. They get a flyer in the bag at the McDonald's drive-through. They get a coupon in the Valpak mailing. They see they get a piece of mail directly from you in the mail. They something comes home from the elementary school about you. Whatever initial source, probably 80%, and I think that number is escalating, but 80% for kids of moms are going to go Google you and look at what everybody else is saying. So if you don't stage manage that really well, and the starting point is the reputation, meaning the reviews, worrying about Google, worrying about Facebook, Google first, Facebook second, and then Yelp third, and whatever else would go down the list, is if you don't start with managing the reputation, then what you'll have is you'll have 1 or 2 crazy people, or 1 or 2 of your competitors, or 1 or 2 problem cases will be the only ones that have a voice. And then 80% of the people who see you initially will see negative. For years before all of this I used to be very concerned about our reputation with Better Business Bureau, but in fact, it didn't make much of a difference, because rarely did anybody ever contact them about what you were like, right? And the thing with Better Business Bureau then and now was only if you didn't respond to a complaint, you got a bad rating. If you responded to a complaint, almost no matter what you said, you had a good rating. That was the whole deal. And Better Business Bureau was just the protection racket. They just wanted to sell you a membership. The Better Business Bureau still exists, but the new version of that is Yelp. They're just in the protection racket. They want to sell you a membership and sell you ads and so forth. So do all these other guys, right? But Google doesn't make managing your reputation contingent upon your paying the money as much as Yelp has been proven to do. But I would start there. I would start with my Google local page. I would start with lots of 5-star ratings. I would make sure that I prioritize Google and then Facebook and then Yelp and then whatever else after that. The next thing I would always prioritize is making sure my website is going to be good for converting traffic. And what most people do is they put up a brochure for their school. And then they confuse the brochure with their school, with a place for their white belts to go get information about their classes. And then they confuse it even further because they have stuff for their brown belts about classes. Then they have photos of events that parents can go look at and pull off. And then they have the class schedule and they have their curriculum. And all of a sudden, they have this mess, which is a resource for advanced students, a resource for intermediate students, a resource for beginning students, combined with prospect information. And even the prospect information is a big online brochure rather than a funnel that drives them in to give you some information, give you more information, initiate an outbound call to you, right? So you've got to separate those out. In our case, for many years, and still, we had 2 different websites. FreeKarate.com, that was the one that was published in any outgoing advertising. So if I did an ad in Valpak or Money Mailer, or I did Advo, or I did a flyers that we were distributing door to door, whatever it might be, we would publish the FreeKarate.com. And it was only a website designed for prospects. We also had MileHighKarate.com, which I knew probably was going to appear better in the search ratings. And it was a site that we could use for students. But I also made sure that when you came to MileHighKarate.com, one of the first things on that was to sort out prospects and drive them over to FreeKarate.com to get them off of that site onto another site. And even then, most of what we would want students to see, curriculum, schedules, information about any individual location, all of that kind of stuff, is that was behind a password protected login. So just like a bank site, existing student login, click here, then they can click login separately and all of that stuff, so that prospects weren't going through all that stuff, right? So if you look at what kind of brochure stuff that people will put on their website that confuses a prospect, putting your full class schedule up there, that's problematic. They don't understand how to read it. If they see 12 beginner classes a week, we think that's a benefit. They interpret it sometimes as though I have to come that often. We can't do that, right? So you want to have the prospects go through a clear process. But my checklist, back to what David had asked, would be reputation, making sure that I have mastered and maximized the Google local positioning so that the map is correct, the phone number is correct, it's got a link to the website, that I have lots of photos up there, and I have a lot of 5-star testimonials at Google, at Facebook, and Yelp in that order, right? And then I would make sure that I have a website for prospects that's going to convert well. And the way you know that is you pay attention to Google Analytics. You make sure your Google Analytics is working on the site. And then you look at how many unique visitors you have, what the bounce rate is. That's how many people show up and immediately leave. That means they ended up at the wrong place. Maybe they're looking for, whoever the current MMA star is, looking for their record, and instead they end up at your karate school site. That traffic was not helpful for you. And depending upon how they got there, you may well have been paying for clicks that you didn't want or need, right? So I look at the bounce rate, and then I look at the unique visitor to opt-in rate, and then the opt-in to appointment rate. And the other stats, and Jimmy, I don't know if you know this answer. I don't know this answer top of my head right now. We also want to get stats on how many people then interact with Dr. Watson. I'm sure I'm sure they have those available. Whether they interact with Google Analytics or not, I don't know. But we'll want to know how many people interact with a chat box and how many people took an action based on that interaction, so you know how effectively it's going to go, right?
Yeah, they do have an analytic for that.
Yeah, I would imagine it's pretty robust.
Yeah, they want to push this a lot. They're basically trying to take over a lot of areas on the internet, and Dr. Watson is going to help to do a lot of things. I mean, they do taxes for H&R Block, and they do shipping and routing for AT&T and phone calls, but they really want to get into all the websites because there's billions of them. And if they can get $150 per website, man, that's going to add to their bottom line big time.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's nice to see IBM coming back into leading the field rather than trailing the field.
Yep, we're actually going to start experimenting with a brand new technology that tracks your cell phone because it's so mobile centric. It knows where you've been. And so basically Google tracks you too, and you can actually find your whole travel thing. So if you went to an elementary school or if you went to a daycare, then you can start receiving ads, just like a targeted thing that, you got a pixel. Well, this tracks where your cell phone's location was, and you don't even have a pixel, they will say. So we can actually target, like in Genie, you can go to a neighborhood and say, okay, I just want people with this number of houses or this, level of income or, whatever else. And so we can actually go into those neighborhoods and say, anybody who lives in these houses, start seeing ads on your phone, start seeing, ads on your laptop, start seeing ads on your desktop. And so it'll be just a geographical tag, not just a pixel you visited this website. So I think that's really exciting too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And of course, Twitter's been doing that for a long time. We just never have figured out how to get Twitter to be effective. A number of the social medias are doing pretty good geo-targeting, down to, everybody who's in a convention center, you can do it. And there's also some little dongles and apps where you can automatically send notification to people's Android phone if they walk past your door and so forth. It's going to be interesting to see how the intersectionality of the outrage that's going on right now about privacy, how that interacts with effective marketing. I always lean towards I want to see effective marketing, and I'm not particularly worried about all this other stuff. And on the same time, I turn it all off on my phone. I don't want it pinging me, notifying me about any damn thing. So it'll be an interesting balance to see how all this stuff sorts out. That book, by the way, I was going to recommend is Rethinking Reputation: How PR Trumps Marketing and Advertising in the New Media World. I would recommend that. It's again one of those things that's out of the realm of our conversation today. But going back pre-internet is, again, my instructor, who sadly passed away last year, he was the absolute all-time master in martial arts at generating publicity, and in all kinds of different ways. And this was his chain of schools was in Washington, D.C., but the number of times that he appeared in the Washington Post or in other publications in the metro area, the Washingtonian, which was the magazine, or he appeared on the ABC, NBC, CBS affiliates, is mind-boggling. And then he got, and beyond that, he got really good at hitting international publicity. I mean, he was famous in Korea, which, from the standpoint of running his martial arts schools, wasn't very helpful. There was one time he did his tournament, and he was the instructor for Congress. So he was in the congressional office building running martial arts classes for, I think, 50 years. And so he did a deal at his tournament where he had the Republicans versus the Democrats. And one set was in blue Junri pads, the other set was in red Junri pads, and they did team fights and they fought each other. And by the way, when these guys fought, they really fought. Most of the people in his Taekwondo program were former boxers or wrestlers and athletic backgrounds. So even although they might have been 65, they were real fights. So, but that got CNN covered it internationally. It's absolutely true that publicity, although you end up with a lot of strikeouts and then an occasional base hit, but then when you get a home run, you really hit a home run. For me with publicity, we had a full back cover of the Denver Post and an inside article in the Denver Post, got over 150 inbound calls, all for free one time. And I can, a series of things like that over the years. And online, that's one area that's readily exploitable, is getting that kind of free press and publicity. Just, don't confuse online media with offline media. There is, movement, and there are some very heavily trafficked sites and so forth. But Mrs. Jones's blog on parenting that 32 people read every month isn't the same as being on the local talk radio, 30 minutes before Rush Limbaugh comes on, or being on the 5 o'clock news on your local NBC affiliate. The good thing about newspaper and TV media is you end up with the stories almost always end up on their website, and then you can get them promoted, and you can text message the link, and you can email and so forth. So that's all very valuable. But again, that book was Rethinking Reputation, How PR Trumps Marketing and Advertising in the New Media World. Hey, Bob, we got to wrap up here in about 92 seconds. Hopefully this has been valuable for everyone. Has it been useful? What I would say is, again, get really good at reputation, get really good at being found on Google. That's both search engine and pay-per-click advertising. Facebook has an awful lot of potential, and other social media has some potential, but Facebook is the 800-pound gorilla. So that has an awful lot of potential. Facebook is not going to give you much traffic for free. It's really a targeted paid advertising media. I was just looking at our reports on Facebook here. We spent, I think, $7,000 last month on media buys on Facebook. So don't expect that Google you can get search engine optimized, but the search engine optimization and all the stuff takes time. And if you're farming it out, it takes money. Facebook, you can post till the cows come home, but it's not going to get you a flood of people coming in the door. Live videos, all that stuff is useful, but mostly it's a effective paid advertising medium that, as Jimmy said, Google and Facebook both are set up for automated A/B split testing. You can do massive amounts of testing quickly. They'll start showing the ads that work, stop showing the ads that don't work. But you've got to have a clear funnel. One of the tools that I like to use on that is leadpages.net. There's also, what is it? Funnels.
Pixar funnel.
Say it again.
Pixar funnel. Is that what you're thinking of?
No. There's another very robust software package with the word funnels in it. But we use Fixture Funnel. We use Call Loop. We use leadpages.net, Infusionsoft, but I don't really recommend that usually. It's a little bit too robust and confusing for most people, but you do have to have a good sequential autoresponder program set up. 3 cheap and easy ones are Aweber, MailChimp, and Constant Contact. Any of them are fine. There's other very robust packages as well. You want to have sequential autoresponder, text messages, and voicemail. One example of that is Call Loop, which I mentioned we used before, but we also use Fixture Funnel, which is a plugin for Infusionsoft. So you do want to have that set up. At that, I'll leave it with anybody who's not. Most everybody on here is a member. For our members, I hope this was valuable. For non-members, Bob, what's your phone number?
720-56-0208.
Say it again. Your audio went kind of crazy there.
Yes, sir. 720-256-0208.
Yeah, I'd recommend give Bob a call. We can schedule a one-on-one follow up, and we can give you some direct feedback on all elements of your school. You're welcome to go to martialartswealth.com. There's a bunch of free information, and again, the website we put together for everybody who bought this independently, we're going to keep building it out with additional bonus content. So you'll find an awful lot more bonus offline marketing material there as well. Well, with that, we're out of time. I'll say adieu, and everybody have a wonderful day.
All right, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.